I'm Lisa. I'm 42 years old, confident, and quite attractive. People usually find me energetic and full of life, which combined with my appearance often draws a lot of attention. I'm married, and while I can't say everything is perfect in my marriage, most of the time I lead a happy life. But honestly, there's always a part of me that craves something more. Sometimes these desires lead me down different paths. I've spent my life trying to suppress my passions, but there are moments when I just can't resist. Of course, these moments are never as simple or smooth as you might think, but I guess life sometimes corners you in ways you never expect. My husband, Jack, loves me. I'm sure of it. But because of his busy work schedule, the bond between us weakens from time to time. It's in those moments that the urge to explore more within myself becomes stronger. That day, I was preparing dinner in the kitchen. It was a Sunday and everyone at home was off doing their own thing. Jack was working on the car in the garage, and my stepson, Alex, was in his room playing video games. The scent of sautéing vegetables filled the kitchen, and a soft tune playing in the background kept me distracted. But there was an odd feeling of restlessness inside me. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something felt different. Then I felt a presence behind me, or rather a being. I couldn't figure out how they had gotten so close without making a sound. When I suddenly turned around, I saw Alex. The expression in his eyes both surprised and unsettled me. "Is something wrong, Alex?" I asked. My voice may have wavered as his sudden appearance had caught me off guard. Alex stayed silent for a moment. It was as if he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. This silence made me even more uneasy. The sizzling of vegetables in the pan and the music playing in the kitchen were the only sounds, as everything else seemed to stop. Finally, Alex, with a slight smile, asked, "The smells are amazing. What are you making?" "A chicken dish with vegetables." "It'll be ready soon if you're hungry," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. But my eyes were still on him. There was something in his gaze, an expression I couldn't quite describe. It both intrigued and unsettled me. At that moment, Alex took a step closer. "Lisa, can I ask you something?" he said. His tone was different from the usual stepson attitude I was used to. It was gentler, more thoughtful. This surprised me and made me focus all my attention on him. "Of course. What do you want, Alex?" I said. I had stopped stirring the pan and was now completely turned toward him. For a moment, he hesitated. He looked down, then glanced back at me. "I sometimes feel lonely in this house. I mean, Dad is always in the garage and you're usually busy with things. I want to spend more time with you," he said. His words both surprised and made me feel a little guilty. I was upset that I hadn't noticed Alex feeling this way. "Oh, I didn't know you felt that way, Alex." "Of course, I can spend more time with you. We need to fix that right away," I said, smiling. At that moment, I looked out the kitchen window. The sun was slowly starting to set. There was something about the moment that made me feel it wasn't an ordinary one. It was unusual for Alex to speak so openly and emotionally, but I knew I had to approach him, make him feel comfortable. "After dinner, we can do something together," I added. "Would you like to watch a movie, or maybe go outside for a walk?" Alex smiled faintly. "Really? That sounds great," he said. But it seemed like he wanted to say something more. Before continuing, he paused for a moment. I turned back to preparing the food, trying to shake the conversation from my mind. But Alex's words and gaze kept swirling in my head. It felt strange for my stepson to open up like that. We had always kept a bit of distance, and this sudden closeness was unexpected. When we sat down at the dinner table, I noticed Alex seemed more relaxed and calm. Jack hadn't come out of the garage yet, leaving us alone. I sensed Alex glancing at me a few times during the meal, but I tried not to pay much attention to it. The conversation flowed around light and casual topics, school matters, future plans, favorite movies. But each time, he looked at me as if he wanted to say something deeper. As we finished dinner and I began clearing the plates, Alex quietly returned to the kitchen. "Lisa," he said, his voice slightly trembling. "I know this might sound a little strange, but I always feel comfortable talking to you." I stopped and turned toward him. "That's a nice thing to say, Alex. You can always tell me anything," I said. I noticed the hesitation in his eyes. "Is everything okay?" Is there something bothering you? I asked. There was a moment of silence. Then Alex said, "Sometimes I find myself wanting to connect with you more." Those words both surprised and made me think. I didn't know how to interpret what Alex had just said. "Thank you for saying that," I said, carefully choosing my words. "I think we could get to know each other better. I believe everyone in this house should be closer to one another." Alex slightly nodded, but his eyes were still on me. It was hard to figure out what those looks meant. "Should we make plans for tomorrow? We could go out together," I suggested. I wanted to build a safe connection with him, but the tension of the moment needed to be addressed. "Sure," Alex replied. "But there's something else." His voice was getting softer. It seemed like he wanted to continue, but he was struggling to find the right words. "What is it, Alex?" "You can tell me anything," I said. I tried to look at his face with a calm expression, but inside, a wave of curiosity was rising about what he might say. Alex took a deep breath and looked down at the ground. It seemed like the weight of what he wanted to say was pressing on his shoulders. "Sometimes, talking to you relaxes me, but at the same time, it strangely excites me," he said. His voice was slow, almost whispering. At that moment, I had trouble understanding what he meant. His words came to me with a strange warmth, but I was trying to decipher the underlying meaning. Without taking my eyes off him, I said, "Can you explain that a bit more, Alex? If you're having trouble expressing yourself, there's no rush." Alex's face turned red, and he shook his head. "No. It's not important. Maybe it's just something silly." "Forget it," he said, stepping back. But something inside me told me he actually wanted to share something. I took a step closer to him and gently touched his shoulder. "Alex, look. It's important that we trust each other in this house. If there's something you want to share, you don't have to keep it to yourself. No matter what, you're in a safe space here," I said. My voice was soft but firm. Alex took another deep breath and finally caught my gaze. "Sometimes I feel really lonely," he said. "But when I see you, somehow that loneliness disappears. I see you differently, Lisa." I don't know how to explain it, but his words trailed off. I thought about how to respond to him in this moment. This kind of conversation was walking a fine line, and I needed to be careful not to give the wrong impression. "Alex, feelings can be complicated sometimes," I said. "But what's important is being able to understand them properly. You need to know that I'm here for you, but you shouldn't let these feelings make you uncomfortable." Alex lowered his head. "You're right. Maybe I've just been confused," he said. But the slight smile on his face showed that this conversation was having a calming effect on him. To ease the weight of the moment, I started tidying up the kitchen. I gently said, "How about we plan a walk tomorrow? Maybe it'll help clear your mind." Alex gave a small smile and replied, "Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea." Alex stayed in the kitchen for a few more minutes chatting with me. His tone and movements began to normalize, but I still felt a tension when talking to him. Maybe it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. After all, it made sense that a young man alone with his stepmother might feel this way, right? I took the pot off the stove, served the food, and then cleaned up the table. Alex rolled up his sleeves to help. His small gesture surprised me, but I also liked it. "Thanks for the meal, Lisa," he said with a slight smile. "You always make such good food." I smiled a little when I heard that. "You're always so thoughtful, Alex. You're really becoming a fine young man," I said. I noticed that my words made him a little embarrassed because he looked down at the floor again. After cleaning up the table, I moved to the living room to relax. Alex followed me and sat down on the couch next to me. He seemed to be messing around with his phone, but I noticed that he would glance at me every now and then. "Would you like to watch a movie?" I asked. I thought distracting him with something might be a good idea. "Sure. That's a good idea," he said, getting up from his seat and immediately turning on the TV. We picked a comedy movie and started watching, but I noticed that Alex was sitting a little too close to me while he sat next to me. I tried to ignore it and focus on the movie. However, after a while, I felt Alex's hand moving closer to me along the edge of the couch. It seemed like he was doing it without realizing, but it made me feel a little uneasy. "Alex," I said, using a soft warning tone. "Is there something you want to say?" Alex paused for a moment at my question, then he lightly shook his head. "No, nothing." I guess I'm just a little uneasy, he said. But the hesitation in his voice made me feel like he wasn't being entirely truthful. Then how about we spend some time outside tomorrow? Maybe that will help you relax, I suggested. I wanted to gently guide him, but I could sense that this was becoming a bit more complicated. Alex nodded with a slight smile on his face. I think that's a good idea, he said. But the look in his eyes told me that the conversation wasn't over yet. The next morning, I woke up early and started the day with a cup of coffee. As I looked out the kitchen window, the events from the night before kept running through my mind. Alex's strange behavior had me both thinking and feeling a bit unsettled. However, I knew the best approach was to stay understanding and supportive. I headed to the kitchen counter to prepare breakfast. As I cracked the eggs and put them in the pan, I noticed Alex quietly entering the kitchen behind me. His presence strangely made me both uneasy and curious. You woke up early, Alex said, smiling faintly. I went to bed early last night, so I'm feeling energized this morning, I replied. Breakfast is ready. Let's eat, and then we can go for a walk. Alex stayed silent for a while, then walked over to the coffee machine and poured himself a cup. Lisa, he said suddenly, his voice firm, but also a bit shy. I'm sorry for what I said last night. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I turned towards him and smiled. Alex, it's okay. We all feel things from time to time. Expressing them can sometimes be confusing, but it's part of being human. I could see a slight sense of relief on his face after my words, but it seemed like he still wanted to say something. When we sat down at the table with breakfast, he continued talking. You know, Lisa, ever since you came into this house, everything has changed. I feel better, but sometimes my mind gets so confused. It's like I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. I decided to speak openly and honestly with him. Alex, what you're feeling is completely natural. Life sometimes throws unexpected emotions at us, and dealing with those emotions can be tough. But the important thing is trying to understand them properly. Alex stared at his coffee cup for a while, then stayed quiet. You're right, he finally said. I guess things will become clearer over time. At that moment, I decided not to dive deeper into the conversation. Trying to reassure him, I said yes. Absolutely. Let's finish our breakfast now, and then take a walk in the fresh air. It'll be good for both of us. Alex nodded and continued eating, but I could tell from his gaze that the conversation wasn't quite over for him. After breakfast, Alex quickly got ready for the walk. I put on a light jacket and joined him. The weather was starting to feel like the first chill of fall, but the sun was still shining warmly. As we walked through the neighborhood, we were both quiet, as if we were both lost in our thoughts. After a while, Alex broke the silence. You know, this walk really helped. I feel like my mind has cleared up a bit. Fresh air always does the trick, I said, smiling at him lightly. As we passed through the park, we decided to sit on a bench and rest for a while. While sitting next to me, Alex leaned slightly towards me and turned to face me. Lisa, I feel better when I talk to you, he said. His sincere attitude eased some of the tension between us. Alex, being able to share these things with you is important to me too. Being part of a family means we need to support each other, I said. We stayed quiet for a while, but the silence added a different meaning to the energy between us. Alex's gaze was on my face, and it brought a feeling that was both slightly uneasy and equally attractive. In that moment, he gently placed his hand on my arm. The gesture seemed natural, but it also carried a conscious search for closeness. This touch made me feel a warmth inside. Lisa, you're really a special person, he said in a low voice. His approach both surprised me and somehow affected me. Leaning slightly toward him, I said, Thank you, Alex. Your words mean a lot to me. I gently held his hand and slowly pulled my arm away, offering him a warm smile. Everything has its time, Alex, I added. Some things become more meaningful with time. My words were a reminder of boundaries, but they also showed that I didn't belittle his feelings. Alex lowered his gaze from my face, nodding. You're right, Lisa. Sometimes you just need to be patient, he said. In that moment, I felt that the tension between us had somehow balanced out. We both got up and continued our walk. However, this situation made me feel like the bond between us had deepened a little more. After the walk, Alex said he wanted to spend some time in the garden. I made coffee and joined him. The air was starting to cool, but the golden light before the sunset made everything seem more peaceful. We sat across from each other at the small table in the garden, quietly sipping our coffee for a while. "Lisa, can I ask you something?" Alex said, lifting his gaze from his coffee cup. "Of course you can," I said, wondering what he would say. "Have you ever thought about whether there are limits to the things you do?" he asked. His voice was calm, but also a little challenging. I was a bit surprised by the question, but I took him seriously and replied, "Everyone has limits in life, Alex. It's important to understand and respect people's boundaries, but I'm not exactly sure what you mean." Alex paused for a moment, then took a deep breath before continuing. "It's just sometimes when I talk to you, I feel like your boundaries are really wide. It's like you're open and understanding about everything. It both relaxes me and makes me think." I understood what he was saying and smiled gently. "Life experiences make you more flexible, Alex, but that doesn't mean I allow everything. Knowing your boundaries is also part of building healthy relationships." I could feel a kind of tension between us during this conversation. Alex's gaze seemed to say more than his words. For a moment, he reached across the table and gently touched my hand. The touch felt both natural and a little unexpected. I didn't think about pulling my hand away because I didn't want to belittle his feelings. But at the same time, I knew I had to maintain boundaries with this touch. "Alex," I said softly, "these feelings can be complicated, but what matters is how we handle them." His eyes lingered on my face for a moment, then he slightly nodded. "You're right, Lisa, but sometimes our feelings can affect us so strongly." With this sentence, I felt it was time to bring the conversation to a close. We finished our coffee and went inside. As Alex headed toward the living room, I went into the kitchen to start clearing the table, but the silence showed that the tension between us hadn't completely disappeared. While I was clearing the table, I sensed Alex walking into the kitchen behind me. He quietly leaned against the counter and began watching me. His closeness made me a little uneasy, but it also intrigued me. "Lisa, how do you stay so calm?" "Sometimes I feel like I'm going to lose control," he said, his voice low but emotional. I slowly put the plate down and turned toward him. "Alex, everyone has moments when they struggle. What matters is making the right decisions in those moments," I replied. After my words, there was a brief moment of silence. Alex took a step closer, and his eyes met mine. "But Lisa, when I'm with you, everything feels different," he said. I felt the impact of his words for a moment, but I knew what to do. I thought this situation shouldn't go any further. Leaning slightly toward him, I said, "Alex, your feelings might be complicated, but it's up to you to control them." I saw hesitation in his eyes. I smiled gently at him and placed my hand on his shoulder. "We're family, and that's more important than anything else. We wouldn't want to do anything that could harm that bond, would we?" I added. At that moment, it felt like the spark between us had faded. Alex took a deep breath and pulled back. "You're right, Lisa. Sometimes my mind gets so tangled," he said. "I get it, Alex. But with time, things will become clearer." I tried to reassure him. This conversation made me feel like the tension between us was under control. Alex quietly went back to the living room, and I continued with my work in the kitchen. But somewhere inside, I could sense that this wasn't completely over and that it could resurface again at some point. After watching something and chatting for hours that evening, Alex slowly got up and said his goodbyes. There was still a search for meaning in his eyes, but I felt like everything was done for the night. Once he left, I needed some time alone to gather my thoughts. It reminded me how life can sometimes be so complicated and unpredictable. I felt a bit more alone, but maybe this loneliness was a way to help everything become clearer. My relationship with Alex had suddenly deepened, but now I needed time to think it through and evaluate the situation better. After giving myself some time, I checked my phone and started recording this video. Like everything else, I decided to leave the past behind. But one thing was certain. This experience that shaped my life had pushed me one step further. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. I'm looking forward to your comments. If you want to hear more stories like this, share your thoughts, and let's continue this journey. I can't wait to see you all in my next video.
ساكنا في الفؤاد يا خير كل العباد، القبة الخضراء فيها كل الشفاء، والدمع في العين جاء، والدم في العين جاء. شوقي للمدينة راحتي الله تمنينا،